it is extremely important that you maintain eye contact with your subjects if you want to have an engaging interview. You're going to have to let people see you, see that you're nodding, see that you're paying attention, see that you are reacting to what it is that they're saying. So in order to do that, occasionally you may have to put a light on yourself, even if you're not on camera, just to make sure your subject can see you and stay engaged in the interview. Now, instructing subjects. Where do they look? How do they answer? What should they focus on? What do they need? Let's talk about instructing subjects. Documentary subjects, understand, are not actors. They are not the same as other performers or spokespeople that I might have on camera. They're not a ham like me, and they can't sit in front of the camera for hours and just spew things out. They are often very nervous about being on camera, so we want to give them a minimum of instructions at the beginning, but there are some key instructions that we're going to have to give them in order to get the best quality interview. So here are the 4 things that I always tell a subject every time I have an interview, almost without fail. So the first thing I tell them is, don't look at the camera, just look at me. First question people are always going to ask you is, where do I look? Do I look at the camera or do I look at you? No, don't look at the camera unless you're doing that technique that I just told you about earlier where you want them to address the camera. Normally, you're going to want them to just look at you. So look at you, they're going to feel much more comfortable. Asking somebody that's not a performer to look directly into the camera, it is a very awkward way for them to speak, looking directly into the camera. So you're going to tell them to just look at you. You're going to tell them next to pause and then answer in a complete sentence. The reason you want to do that is because you want to leave yourself room in the edit room so that you can then cut and isolate their answers into sound bites as you need. You're going to be interviewing somebody for 45 minutes, but in reality, for most projects, you might only use a minute, or in some cases even 30 seconds out of that whole 45 minutes might be the only 30 seconds that are appropriate to tell the story that you're trying to tell in your documentary. So you want them to answer you in a complete sentence, because if you say, where am I from? And they say, Chicago, I can't edit just Chicago. That doesn't make any sense to my audience. But if they say, I was born on the south side of Chicago, if they say that, then now I have a sentence that I can isolate and use, and it makes sense and stands on its own. So I need statements, whether they're complete sentences or as close to complete sentences as possible, that stand on their own. So tell them answer in a complete sentence, and often, this is a tricky one, by the way. A lot of people have problems with this because you're speaking to people that, again, are not professional performers, so they're not always going to remember it. Usually what you want to do is ask a few basic, simple questions in the beginning that if they don't answer in a complete sentence, you can kind of remind them the first 2 or 3 times, and then usually they're going to remember after that. The next thing you're going to do is tell them, don't worry if you make a mistake. None of this is being recorded live. Make sure you let subjects know that, hey, I can edit it out. It's okay to stop and repeat yourself. It's okay to stop and give your answer again, because we are simply editing. As we're making this video, if I misspeak, we're just putting my hand up in front of my face like this, and we're going to cut so that I have a visual cue, and we're going to go back and start over again. So it's okay if they make a mistake. Let people know that so they're not so on edge. Next thing we're going to do is offer some water or other creature comforts if it's appropriate for your documentary. As you're talking to somebody, for people are talking for 45 minutes straight, half hour straight, your voice gets very dry, as mine does when I'm giving these presentations like right now. So I'm stopping every few minutes to take a sip of water. So even if they say no, keep the water nearby, because I guarantee you after 20 minutes, they're going to want a swig of water. So you want to be right there ready with it so you can keep on going with your rhythm. Now, as far as creature comforts, what I mean by that are other things that could be a little bit controversial, and you're going to have to make a judgment call for your particular piece. Things like, you know, maybe somebody wants to have a beer there. Maybe they want to have a cigarette. Maybe, you know, I don't know, whatever it is, what you're going to have to ask yourself is that appropriate portrayal of this person? Is it a fair and appropriate portrayal? So even though they might want it on camera, is that something that's appropriate to have in your documentary? Is it something that's appropriate to have in your corporate piece? If it is, it might be something that makes them more comfortable. That's why they're called creature comfort. So if my subject is a chain smoker and they want to have a cigarette on camera, it's probably going to make for a better interview, but at the same time, it might portray them in a light that I may not want portrayed in my documentary. So it's going to be a judgment call as I go along. But what the main point is that you want to give them some basic instructions. They're going to help you put your piece together, but you don't want to overwhelm them with instruction, because regular, everyday people aren't going to be able to remember all these things. So instead of paying attention to the questions you're asking them, they're going to keep asking themselves, oh, am I looking in the right place? Am I answering a complete sentence? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Instead of thinking and engaging with you on the things you're asking. So this can get tricky. So try to keep it simple, and sometimes you're going to have to make some compromises along the way.